What if everything you've been told about God was never meant to awaken you, but to weaken you? What if the story of God that dominates the world today is not a revelation, but a replacement, carefully engineered to conceal a truth so powerful that if ordinary people remembered it, entire systems of control would collapse overnight? From childhood, you were taught that God is a king, a judge, a distant father in the sky, separate from creation and far removed from you. You were taught to pray upward, to beg, to wait, to fear. You were taught that power lives elsewhere, that holiness is external, and that truth must be mediated through institutions. But this idea of God is not ancient, it is political, and it is one of the greatest intellectual takeovers in human history. The oldest civilizations did not experience God as a person. They experienced God as presence, as force, as consciousness itself. The Tao of ancient China described it as the way underlying all things. The Upanishads of India called it Brahman, the uncreated reality from which everything arises, and they taught that the soul, Atman, is not separate from it. Their most dangerous teaching was simple and direct. Tat Twam Asi, thou art that. You are not made by the divine, you are an expression of it. This idea appears again and again across cultures. In ancient Egypt, divinity was embedded in nature and consciousness. In early Greek philosophy, thinkers like Heraclitus spoke of the logos, an intelligent order permeating all existence. Later, the philosopher Baruch Spinoza would state plainly that God is not a being outside nature, but nature itself, infinite and eternal. Even Christian mystics like Meister Eckhart warned that as long as you seek God outside yourself, you will never find him. This was God as immanence, God in everything, God as being itself. And that knowledge was dangerous, because when a human knows that God is not separate from them, fear collapses, authority shifts inward, meaning becomes internal. You no longer need permission to exist, intermediaries to be whole, or rulers to define your worth. A person who knows God within themselves cannot be easily enslaved. So the story changed. God was removed from the world and placed above it. The living force became a distant ruler. The infinite presence became a throne. God was no longer in the river, he made the river. No longer in your breath, he owned your breath. Humanity was redefined from divine expression to fallen creation. Power was externalized. Guilt was introduced. Obedience became sacred. This was not an accident. It was strategy. Religion, once a direct experience of the sacred, was converted into belief systems. And belief is weaker than knowing. Belief can be managed. Belief can be threatened. Belief can be controlled.
Early Christian texts that preserve the older understanding, like the Gnostic Gospels discovered at Nag Hammadi, spoke openly of the divine spark within humanity and taught that salvation came through direct knowledge, gnosis, not obedience. They even suggested that the God who ruled the material world was not the highest divine reality, but a lesser being, ignorant of the true source. Those texts were banned, burned, declared heresy, not because they were false, but because they restored power to the individual. When people know God directly, they don't need churches to mediate truth, kings to rule by divine right, or empires to define morality. They don't fight endless wars over whose God is real. They don't surrender their authority to institutions that profit from their ignorance. And this mechanism did not end in the ancient world. It evolved. Today, the same system operates through politics, media, consumerism, and ideology. The message is unchanged. Power is outside you. Salvation comes from leaders, systems, products, nations, or beliefs. Look outward, obey, consume, compete, stay divided. Because a person who discovers God as consciousness itself, present, aware, alive within them, cannot be governed by fear. That is why God was hidden. Not because humanity was unworthy, but because humanity was too powerful. Knowledge of God is not comforting, it is liberating, and liberated people do not make good subjects. So, what is God? God is not a who, God is a what. God is the fundamental, uncreated consciousness in which the universe appears. The intelligence behind physical laws, the awareness before thought, the same presence in the ant and the astronaut, the star and the cell, the field in which all things arise and dissolve. You are not separate from this. You are not beneath it. You are a localized expression of it. The power within you is not supernatural. It is simply the power of remembering what you are. If this understanding of God is clearing your path, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe so more minds can remember what was hidden. They built systems to make you forget this, to make you seek divinity in idols, institutions, bank accounts, and authority figures, to trade inner sovereignty for external worship, to replace direct knowing with belief. But the ancient secret was never destroyed. It was hidden in the only place they could never reach, within you. And the most revolutionary act you can commit today is not rebellion, but remembrance. To sit in silence and feel the awareness that has always been there. To look at nature and recognize yourself. To stop outsourcing your power to systems that depend on your forgetting. The kingdom of heaven was never coming. It was never lost. It is within you. If this understanding of God is clearing your path, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe so more minds can remember what was hidden. Because remembering is how freedom begins.